Welcome to the Firehouse Roundtable podcast, brought to you by the Ventura Fire Foundation. My name's Peter McKenzie. I'm one of the hosts. I'm a retired fire captain with the City of Ventura Fire Department.
And I'm Jason Kay. I'm an active fire captain also with the Ventura Fire Department.
And we are excited that you are going to spend some time with us at the kitchen table, learning about firehouse issues that we're trying to bring awareness to.
Thanks for joining us as we discuss the issues of being a firefighter, both on and off duty, and how it affects us.
Let's get right to it.
All right, guys, welcome to the show. Today we have on 3 separate firefighters with Ventura City who have recently just finished their probationary year. And I really wanted to do an episode that highlighted guys getting off probation and kind of their story and where they came from and kind of get to know each of us. Because as I talk to you guys, I feel like each of you guys has a pretty big story that surprises me when I kind of get to know you guys. And it'd be cool for everybody who are listeners as well as on the department to just kind of hear where you came from. So Jeremy Hinman, Gurshan Bajwa, and Stephan Parrish are with us today. Let's start with Jeremy. Would you kind of give us a synopsis, an intro about yourself and where you came from and how you ended up in Ventura?
Yeah, so thanks for having me, guys. My name is Jeremy Hinman. I'm 29 years old. I'm originally from North County, San Diego. I lateraled from the Vista Fire Department, which is also North County, San Diego. I worked there for a little over 3 years. I got into the fire service after doing a ride-along with my neighbor, who was a longtime captain at Carlsbad Fire. And one ride-along kind of got me in. I was immediately hooked on the whole camaraderie and just the love of the job. So after that, right out of high school, started doing all my fire classes, got into medic school, fire academy, and got hired when I was about 24 years old. I come from a big Irish Catholic family of 7 kids. I'm the second youngest. I have no kids right now for myself, but I'm married and my wife and I are in the process of buying a new home right now. What brings me to Ventura is my wife is from the area. She's got family kind of all over Ventura County, but we decided to move up here once we started having kids. We want to be closer to her family. And I saw that once Ventura City was open, I thought it'd be a great opportunity. So I just decided to apply and was lucky enough to get selected. So that's kind of what brought me here.
Yeah, nice. I actually thought when you were telling me that you moved up here, you were going to give us a big surprise on the show and go, oh, yeah, now that we're having kids. And I was going to be surprised.
Not yet.
And Peter, you have something in common. Did you know that Hinman was from San Diego area?
I did, yeah. When we met at the Christmas party or whatever foundation event we had. Yeah. So I actually grew up in Oceanside / Carlsbad. My mom lived in one, dad in the other. And it was down there that I got interested in the fire service. I volunteered at Borrego Springs Fire, way out east there. And my mentor was kind of a San Diego City guy. So yeah, definitely still got family down there. I like it down there. It's way too crowded, like comparatively now.
It's gotten a lot busier since I was younger, but I grew up in the same area, Carlsbad, and then Oceanside, and then up here.
Perfect. Well, welcome to the department. Glad to have you.
One of the things we've talked about, Jeremy, is how similar Ventura City and Vista were, and the size of departments and call volume and that kind of stuff. Is that still how you feel after being here a year or so?
Yeah, the adjustment for me was somewhat easy because the culture is pretty much the same. You still have that like old school group of guys who work really hard and have that kind of like professional California mentality. So that was pretty smooth for me transitioning into this department. And then call volume, we were just about right there with Ventura City as far as call volume. The only difference is we transported. So I spent some time on the ambulance down there. But yeah, I would say overall, the transition was pretty easy and it feels very similar. Demographic, call volume, being close to the beach, all that, it was pretty similar. So I was lucky.
Nice. Gurshan, why don't you give us an introduction about yourself and what brought you into Ventura?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having us. Gurshan, I grew up in Simi Valley. Didn't ever think I was going to be a firefighter. There weren't a whole lot of Indian firefighters in Simi Valley to look up to and see. I've got a very close family. My parents came from India in the late 70s. And again, just firefighting wasn't a thing that I really knew to get into. I studied economics. I worked in finance for quite a few years and just kind of lost a real tangible impact of anything that felt like it mattered. I had a kind of along that time frame of struggling with feeling like I needed to do more. Had a loss in the family, and that kind of was that spark of seeing the medics come in and do the things that they did of, being a paramedic. Maybe that's something that can be impactful. And again, firefighting was never really on my radar. Didn't really know it as a thing. Went to EMT school, kind of fell in love with it from just even working on the IFT side of things. Started working up in Ojai on a 911 ambulance as an EMT. Just started falling deeper in love with it. Went to paramedic school down at UCLA. And again, just kind of everything I did just made me love it even more. Started working here in Ventura County on the ambulance. And the more exposure I got of running calls, just wanting to be deeper into this, that led me to go volunteer over at Fillmore Fire and volunteer with the air unit here in Ventura County. And all of that just started driving me towards this goal of being a firefighter. One day I was actually working here in Ventura on the ambulance, and a couple of guys kind of pulled me aside and like, "Hey, do you know we've got an application process open. You should put in for it. We think you'd be a good fit here." And that kind of was that catalyst of like, maybe I should. Let's do this. Applied, was lucky enough to get through the process, and went through the academy, and I was lucky enough to get hired along with Steve and Jeremy and the rest of the guys. And that's ultimately what brought me here.
Nice. I know you and I recently discussed your humanitarian project that you just did, your bike ride. Was it through Africa? Say a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I was fortunate. I've done a few kind of long distance charity bike rides, and that put me in touch with an organization that does some charity rides through Africa, specifically through Zambia. And they were looking for a volunteer to help with the medical side of things. And so I was fortunate enough to go do a 10-day bicycle ride through Zambia, rode bicycles about close to 400 miles over 7 days. And luckily, as the medic on the ride, didn't have to do anything too serious, just some sunburns and some sore butts from riding. But it was an incredible experience. I was very fortunate to be a part of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm not going to ask you about much treatment you did for the sore butts, but I appreciate you bringing that up. Okay. And also today, last but not least, we have Stephan Parrish coming from his vehicle doing his interview today. So give us a little intro about you, Steve.
So my name's Steve. I'm 39 years old. Just been here for about a year and a half with Ventura City. Spent about 6.5 years with CAL FIRE Riverside prior to that. Prior to that, I was a paramedic at AMR for about 7 years, flying all over the place, looking to get hired. Married 10 years, got a wife, 2 kids, Taylor 4 and Cole is 7. They just turned 4 and 7. So when I'm not at work, I'm busy at home dealing with that. Baseball, gymnastics, school. Just got off this morning, so I'm here in a Pasadena parking lot, halfway to home. I commute from the Riverside area. So I applied for Ventura. This is actually an interesting story. This is the third time. When I got hired, it was the third time I had applied for Ventura. The first 2, I'd made it all the way to Chiefs interviews, and it was about like one away from being hired for both those times. So the third time's a charm. Here we are. One of the things that interested me about Ventura, I've spent a few days here driving up north, kind of one of those halfway points driving to the 49ers game. So I'd stay in Ventura, hit the beach up, and kind of fell in love with the city. Love the beach atmosphere. It's a cool city. The downtown area it's fun to go hang out. So initially, my first time when I applied here, I was at CAL FIRE getting hammered with overtimes, trying to find other places. And I put my application in and did the captain's interview. Went great. Met some of the guys there. They were really helpful, very friendly, kind of one of the things that I liked about the department. And then prior to my Chiefs interview, Chief Miser actually called me and talked to me personally prior to the interview, which is something I'd never experienced in my career before. I'd done plenty of interviews, been to Chiefs a few times, and not one time had a battalion chief ever called me prior to the interview to talk about the city and kind of tell me all the great things about it, which is one of the things that kind of set me wanting to come here, which is why I applied multiple times after that. So that was one of the reasons why I decided to come to Ventura, along with just meeting the guys in the interview process, which I felt like I'd be a good fit. Same type of personality, and kind of the rest is history.
Steve, I got a question for you. What was your motivation for leaving CAL FIRE? You mentioned that tons of overtime. I mean, we've had people on here from Cal Fire, and I think everybody kind of knows what the work schedule is like down there. Did that influence your decision to get out of there, or what was the process behind that?
Definitely. So I've been there for I totaled 6.5 years. The first couple of years I was there, I was just married, no kids. And then having 2 kids kind of made me realize that I need to be home more. I was working 3 on 4 off as their standard schedule, along with about 4 to 6 mandates per month. So I was working anywhere from 15 to 20 days a month, not including the summers when you're on staffing patterns, which you can be on duty for. The longest I spent was 18 days at the fire station without going home, which is not even on a fire assignment. I was just at the station running calls, getting beat up. So that was one of the reasons why I chose to leave. It was for the betterment of my family, being able to stay home with the family. And that was the main reason as to why I left. And I think most of the guys that leave that place would have the same thing to say.
What effect did it have on your family?
So my wife works full time. She's a nurse. So she would have to call off quite a bit because I'm getting mandated every morning coming home. Almost every day I come home, I would get mandated at least 1 to 2 days. There was times where I would come into work, get a call from the battalion chief on day 1 saying, hey, I know you got 4 days off coming up, but we're going to mandate you on all 4. So I'd run a 10-day stretch at work. And it just, without having kids, it's not a big deal for me. Like my wife could do it, but with her working full time, her having to call off, it was more of a stress on her than myself. And then just missing out on things like birthdays, which I know we do that here in the fire service, but it was just unsustainable for me. So that was the main reason as to why I left.
It's interesting you say. Yeah, no, I think it's good for our listeners to hear, because we've had specifically like the Deer Chiefs gals on, and I think one of them's Cal Fire. And so we've heard from the families on the other side of Cal Fire's world, what it's like for them. It's good to hear like someone who's young, new in their career, and how it impacted you too. Cause I mean, it has a big impact. You do that for 30 years, you're going to have some problems, right? In your family and your own, but good. Yeah. Interesting. Well, welcome to you as well. Welcome to Gurshan. We're stoked that you guys are on the department. You guys come with some experience. You come from another department. You know, this isn't your first rodeo when it comes to the probation and fire service, all that stuff. What's your guys' plan? And we asked Rocky this before as well. What are you guys going to do? Like we're a small department. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. That's extra. Some guys find like a little niche that they end up doing, but do you guys have any plans or any thoughts on, you know, what life looks like for you after now that probation's over? And
I'm going to interrupt you. Jeremy's actually going to stay on his shift for as long as he can. That's with me. That's why I say that.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
I'm stoked to have him on our crew.
Yeah, and I guess it's not necessarily what station are you going to go to, because I think that's not as relevant. But like, what type of, you know, any plans for making an impact or a difference at the department? Because I mean, you guys, this isn't, like I said, the first time you've been in the fire department. It's a very few people that do most of the work, and there's a lot of work to be done. So just question, like, have you given it some thought? If not, maybe it's something that you should start considering, but where are you guys at with that?
One of the things I always say when I do their annual reviews is pick something that you enjoy doing, so there's not a bunch of stuff that you don't enjoy that gets thrown on your lap. So what is something like Peter's asking, what is something that you guys would pick that you're into or want to get into?
Yeah, I got something for that. I was kind of like the lead as far as like cancer prevention in my last department. And I know that's a big need in every department. So that's something I would like to see kind of taking a bigger role on here at Ventura City, is kind of promoting that and hopefully taking over some projects as far as cancer awareness, cancer prevention, keeping our guys safe. Cause that's a big thing in our job. My senior fireman, when I was on probation, died from melanoma from work-related cancer. He was only 33 years old, and that was kind of my biggest motivation to make sure the other guys are, you know, around me are safe and practicing safe practices, stuff like that, deconning after fires. That was one big thing for me, and that's something I would like to see a little bit more here, and maybe try and take the lead on that as far as cancer prevention.
Yeah, I think that's good. A lot of that stuff ties in with the foundation's mission as well, as far as keeping the guys safe, aware, all that stuff. Anyway, awesome. Yeah, great answer. Gurshan, same question to you. Obviously, you don't have like the 6 years of experience at another department. But what are your thoughts now that you're off probation? You given any thought to that?
Yes, yeah. So, I mean, for me, I don't have that kind of coming in and bringing what I had from another department, but at least so far, just raising my hand for everything, trying to get as much exposure, trying to learn as much as I can, and anything that comes up, just trying to be a part of it. There's a ton to do around here, and so I think kind of touching on what Captain K said is trying to find those things that you do really enjoy. And I think I'm at a place where let's go find those things that we really enjoy.
Yeah. There is a little bit of a trap in that, like in raising your hand for everything. you can quickly dilute your efforts and or get taken advantage of because everybody will dump everything on your lap. So my advice always is like pick one or two things and like focus and become an expert at those things versus the guy that does everything. And because that has a cost to your family and your days off as well. But yeah.
I have a question for you, Jeremy. What specifically were you applying to other departments as a lateral? What other departments, now that you're off probation, you could be totally honest. And was it kind of like all around Ventura that you were applying in this area or north and south, or was it just Ventura? How'd that go?
No, it's funny. I'm not from this area. I don't know anything about Ventura County, Oxnard, Santa Barbara. I just looked up Ventura City when I saw the job application and saw that it was on the beach. And that was the biggest thing for me. I grew up surfing, I grew up in the ocean, and my wife's originally from Simi Valley. And I told her, I'm not going to live in Simi Valley, but I'll live in Ventura. And once I saw the job application was open, I was like, that's a no brainer, beach department. And then when I started to learn like, oh, they have an ocean rescue program, they run calls on the beach. That was kind of the hook for me. And just after completed probation, I joined the Ocean Rescue Academy. So it's kind of all fallen into place.
So that's another thing you're volunteering for is the Ocean Rescue team that we have in Ventura. Gurshan, I know it's common to apply to a ton of departments to try to get on. I also know that I saw you at AMR for years before you ended up working here. Had you applied a bunch of places or were you focused on this area?
It was, again, being a firefighter was not really on my radar. I kind of had a different path that I thought I was going to go on. Once I started getting more exposure to firefighting, kind of that being, in a sense, the furthest from, in the world of EMS that we can go as being a paramedic and allowing me to do the most that I can in that role, fire kind of presented itself as the right avenue. So I had only applied to a handful of places, but nothing very aggressively. I loved working in Ventura. It was, there's something special about this city and about the kind of geography, the demographics. It's a really kind of a unique place, and it was definitely my top choice. I had kind of put applications in other places, but nothing that I was really passionate about aside from here.
Nice. And I know that we don't have ambulances, which makes it attractive to a lot of guys to come up, or guys and girls to come up and work for Ventura City. How much did that affect your decision on wanting to work here? Or was that something that was just kind of an aside?
I was probably number two. Number one was the beach. Number two was no ambulances. I unfortunately was transported in the ambulance during COVID, and that was probably one of the hardest times in the career because you are waiting at the hospital for 3-4 hours with wall times. And I was getting old. So your pump shifts or your engine shifts were like sacred. So when I learned that Ventura City didn't transport and I'd be on the engine full time, that was a no brainer for me. So I do miss the ambulance from time to time. If you had like a good partner like Gurshan or someone where it's fun staying up all night and running calls, like that was a good time, but it was a lot less sleep. So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I know that, staying up all night is fun when you're early 20s maybe and running calls. And then when you get married and have a family or get a little older, it's not as fun anymore. Gurshan, another question for you. Tell me a little bit about your finance background. I know you and I had spoke a little bit about that and exactly what that is. And I think you went to school for that, right? You have a degree for that, and you ended up working in that field for a number of years. And it wasn't completely separate from the medical side of the fire department. So talk a little bit about that.
I studied economics, I got a job working with Kaiser, and I worked as a financial analyst, an accountant, just kind of in that role I think I was with Kaiser for about 7 years. And then I worked for a few nonprofits in the LA area doing kind of financial analysis, reporting, budgeting, forecasting models, all that stuff, kind of working in a lot of that kind of economic side into it. After that, I actually started a medical clinic with my sisters. They're both doctors, and having worked on the administrative side of things, I kind of knew how to run, or at least work the finances and the operation side. So we had a pretty successful medical practice for a few years, sold that as we all kind of moved into different areas and different venues in our lives. And ultimately kind of brought me here. So having a little bit of that healthcare finance side of things has been a good perspective to have. It's been kind of nice to kind of, especially with our open enrollment. Recently, I was asked to be a part of our SAFER board as a treasurer. So there are definitely places where I can take a lot of that previous experience and kind of plug it into our world here. And so often we're kind of focused in on the calls and the firefighting and kind of the exciting things. And at least from my perspective, it's nice to have a little bit of experience kind of pulling from a different world that I can at least kind of hope to make this place a little better if I can.
Nice. So as the new guy on the show today, not a lateral, is there anything, and I know I'm putting you on the spot, but is there anything that surprised you about the fire service? And then I'll ask these other guys specifically about Ventura City. But is there anything that surprised you in general about the fire service or about Ventura Fire Department that you completely weren't expecting?
Well, I mean, kind of Jeremy touched in on it a little bit. That the previous life of working on the ambulance and running calls, and an average call taking, at best an hour between call time, transport time, hospital time. The first thing that I kind of loved was the fact that I could sometimes get back into my bed and my sheets still be warm. But on that token, trying to figure out what makes a successful career. That's been kind of the most surprising, the hardest thing. Is it kind of making 30 years through this? Is it, what capacity, what really defines that successful career? Kind of being able to look around and see different versions of it. And maybe it's an answer that I'm still trying to find. But it not necessarily being just longevity, of doing our 30 years or getting to that retirement date and making it through, but trying to find a path to be truly successful in it, I think has been a surprise, in it not being such a straightforward path.
Yeah, you want to enjoy that time, right? Not just thrive. Right. I mean, thrive, not just get by.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept on like what makes a successful fire service career, because it's actually a really good question, because it's so much like what could be a really good career for you could be a terrible experience for your family, right? Like, So there's so much like balance that has to come in where you're balancing the competing interests in your world. Like, because the fire department, if you let it, will keep taking, right? Like it'll like Steve was saying, like it'll put you to work 20 plus days a month if you let it, right? Or if you volunteer too much and then your family's at home suffering. So I think balancing family and career is a big part of it, because if you sacrifice one too much versus the other, like there's some real consequences to that. You could be struggling in your personal life and getting a divorce, or your kids not knowing who you are, or, the flip side is you could suck at your job. And if you're never around, and that doesn't really define success either. But I think everybody struggles with that. I don't know the answer to that if I had to look back. What do you think, Jason? Been doing it long enough.
The new term that we keep hearing is work-life balance. I don't even think that was a term like 5-8 years ago. Now everybody's talking about work-life balance, and how many overtimes do you pick up now that mandates are so plentiful?
Hi, I'm Austin Folk, an engineer with the Ventura City Fire Department. I'm also on the board of the Ventura Fire Foundation, an organization that supports firefighters and their families. The foundation produces this podcast as part of our mission. I worked with the foundation because I was witness to the help that it was able to provide to my family. The foundation needs your help. First, Please subscribe and rate this podcast on your podcast platform. This helps us get a higher ranking and more visibility for the show. Second, if you support the podcast and the foundation's work, please consider donating. Every dollar helps us support firefighters and their families. There's a link in the show notes, or you can donate through the website at www.venturafirefoundation.org. Thank you for listening.
Steve, I'll hit you with the question. Now that you're off probation and you come to the department with some experience from your other, from CAL FIRE, what are you, I think we were talking, I don't know how much you caught. We were talking about we're a small department, especially compared to CAL FIRE where you came from. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be done. There's not a lot of people who necessarily volunteer. Not really talking about the whole voluntold thing, but what are your interests? What do you see? What kind of impact do you see making now that you're not on probation? You're going to be here for a while, hopefully. What are your where's your head at with that stuff?
So I've kind of thrown my name in the hat for a few things. I know initially after probation, they were recruiting people for the mentor program. I wasn't selected for that, but now I just got the email from Chief Henderson about a week or two ago that I'm going to hazmat, which is something I've kind of always been interested in. My previous captain from CAL FIRE, who was kind of one of my mentors, was an old hazmat captain. I worked hazmat actually with Chief Henderson for a few years, I believe. And he's kind of caught my interest in that. So I'll be going to hazmat come spring here. We're kind of waiting on the class dates. But myself and two other firemen are going to be going to hazmat. So that's something I'm kind of interested in. It's something I've always, like I said, wanted to do my whole career, expand my horizons a little bit and do that. And also, I've got about 7 years in the fire service, almost 8 now. And I'm kind of trying to put my hat in for the engineer position. So I'm going to start prepping for the engineer test. And as soon as I'm eligible, try to promote.
Gotcha. Yeah. Hazmat definitely opens some doors for you. What questions do you guys have about the department or how this works or the foundation or, from your fresh perspective, like coming into our world, what are your thoughts? Like what I don't, it's kind of an open-ended random question, but anything come to mind?
So I think it's a great thing, like just seeing what the Fire Foundation has done for people like Clappy's family after he passed away. Where I came from, we didn't have anything like that. We're a larger department. So we have like a benevolent fund and all that stuff, but nothing as personal as this that kind of leans towards Ventura firemen. That's something that's one of the reasons why I left such a big department as well. You work with guys that you know their name on a piece of paper, but when they show up to work, you've never worked with them before. I like that intimacy where like guys like Gurshan and Jeremy, like I see them almost every day or every week, and you know everybody that you work with, and that's awesome because you can show up to work and you have things in common. You know their families, you know their kids, what they're into, and that's something I didn't really have coming from CAL FIRE other than like the time that you work for, but it was such a large department. That's one thing that kind of pushed me out of that as well.
Yeah, gotcha. No, that makes sense. You definitely know the people. And frankly, sometimes you know them better than you know your own family. Yeah, interesting. Any memorable experiences from probation? Any good stories or things you guys want to talk about?
Well, I mean, the academy was entertaining. Yeah, the MUX workouts. Yeah, the beat drill and. Well, I remember our
all right, let's talk about those. Yeah, let's hear about the MUX workouts.
Yeah, there was probably in my mind, there's 3 workouts that like stick out. And there's one, it was running a mile in turnouts with a BA with a van blasting mariachi music behind us. That was like the pinnacle of our academy. 30 minutes of burpees straight was a big one. But yeah, the academy was really physically demanding and really tough. And people had told us like, hey, it's going to be hard, but it was worse than that. And, but it was fun. We all bonded over it. We started out with 9, but we all got super close because we were suffering. But once we made it out of it, we felt super accomplished and achieved. And we kind of have that badge of honor that we made it through a MUX academy, And,
was it his car that was playing the mariachi music or
no, it was this beater. It was like a beater white van from, I don't know where he got it, but we would all jump in and go down to the beach and do workouts. But he used it as PT. We'd push it around, the drill grounds. He'd put weights in the car. We'd have to push it around while he's playing mariachi music, but it was definitely memorable.
That's pretty funny. Steve, what about you?
Yeah, it's same with Jeremy. The two workouts that stand out for me was, like you says, the turnout 1 mile run with full BA, everything. And then I remember the first workout was that burpee workout. I'm older. I got hired. I was 38 years old going through the academy. All these guys are younger, Jeremy and all those guys. Like, I remember 30 minutes of burpees about halfway through thinking to myself, what the hell did I get myself into? My body's old.
Were you guys doing them in sync or just at your own pace?
Well, we were at our own pace, but he was watching us. He said, don't stop. If you want to go and slow down a little bit, you can slow down. You just don't stop. So
yeah,
that was
insane.
Yeah, that was rough.
Go ahead, Jason. I know you had something to say.
No, I was just going to ask him, same thing. I was going to ask him specifically about the academy. Is there anything that surprised you? And I know how physically demanding it is. And a lot of times lateral academies are not physically demanding. And Gurshan, you went through the county academy, right? Was there anything that surprised you in there? I know that's pretty physically demanding too.
Yeah, the kind of to touch on that, I think the part that was the worst for me was coming from the county academy. They had like a trainer who would do proper recovery runs and recovery workouts that would kind of, on the days that we'd get kind of broken off, we'd have a chance to recover with stretching and workouts. So that the day following our burpee workout, our 30 minutes of burpees, we get together and I think one of the captains says, "Hey, we're going on a recovery run today." And this might be hard for the listeners to picture, but this body wasn't made to run long distances and do pull-ups. I can keep going, but there's certain things that this body just doesn't excel at. So we start on this recovery run, and I think it was like 6 miles, and each point we'd stop and do different things. And at one point, one of somebody's nose started bleeding, and it's just like, all right, nope, get after it. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, let's keep going. And that whole time I'm just sitting there like cursing everybody who said this was a recovery run. That was the worst of it. But it definitely, I do appreciate bringing us together, and it helped us as a group bond because we had that kind of passion towards the suck, if you will.
Yeah. I can see where you're coming from with. Same with me. I used to run. And it's never a very long distance, and it's always a super hard workout. But some body types are different than others, right? I want to change subjects a little bit and ask you guys specifically, if you ever listen to our podcast or you know what the foundation is all about, we focus on families and mental health a lot. And I think this is kind of something new in the fire service that's being brought up and talked about a bunch. Is there anything, I'm going to start with Gurshan because you're not privy to a ton of the history of the fire service and running calls for, say, 10 years like the other two guys or so have been. Is there anything that scares you or surprises you when you talk to the guys on the foundation board? Any of that long-term PTSD stuff? Is there anything you're doing specifically for yourself or that you worry about when it comes to that stuff? Is there anything we can do or provide as a foundation that would help with that stuff?
Yeah, I think there's a few things coming from there, that finding productive, good outlets to really utilize our time. And like you had mentioned earlier, making the most of our days off. It's so easy to just kind of get caught in the grind and then all of a sudden, whether it's a 4-day or whatever, with mandates, whatever version of a short segment of days you have off, or, you kind of turn around and you question where those days off went because they kind of just end up in a blur. So trying to find ways that are productive, I think, is one of the struggles, but trying to kind of touching on that, the successful longevity of a career and what that means. I've been pretty fortunate to be assigned onto our day support company. So our medic truck 105 now. And I've worked in EMS for about 7 years prior to coming here and working those 24-hour shifts, thinking that was the answer, right? I have my big chunks of days off and being able to sleep every night and kind of go home at the end of the day with, we do our 4 10-hour shifts a week. I've noticed in myself a pretty significant improvement in that. And so trying to hope and see if there's versions of this that we can have forth when we get, I'm fortunate to be early in my career and assigned to a unit like this, but at least for those guys who have been here for 15, 20 years and finding a way to to be home every night for their families and have some regular sleep, I think has been a pretty significant thing for me. And trying to look down to the future of what that means for our fire service and the changes to be able to start to have that regular sleep, work that through in terms of our mental health as well. I'm curious what the future holds for us, but it's definitely something that I've been fortunate to experience here.
Yeah, good for you for noticing that early on. So would you say that given the opportunity, would you stay on a 40-hour work week? Is that your preference at this point?
Honestly, I think a few months ago, I would have had a completely different answer for you, but the last 3 months I've been on this, and I've noticed significant improvements in just how I feel, but then also talking to the rest of the crew. And I think the thing that was most surprising to me is when I do choose to go work a 24, even the nights that I have a good night where we might have one wake up or, two, or even sleep all night, I still feel the effects of being at work, not being in my own bed and sleeping regularly. So yeah, I think if I had the opportunity to, I would love to stay on this schedule.
Interesting. Yeah. Interesting. Steve, I want to hear about your last department and kind of compare and contrast between what you guys had as far as a peer support team versus Ventura City, what we could learn from them and maybe what we do better than other departments. So tell me a little bit about that. And if you have any experience specifically with any mental health stuff or family issues that we usually talk about on the podcast or with the foundation.
So we didn't have like a fire foundation like we do here in Ventura. We had a benevolent fund, which was it's not as personal as we have here at Ventura City. It feels like we have people in the peer support team that check out on, reach out on us all the time just to see how we're doing. That's something that we didn't really have at CAL FIRE other than just your own crew looking out for each other, seeing how you guys are doing. Here, it's like we have a team that's assigned, and if you have any issues or there's a bad call, they'll pull you into the office. We can have a conversation about it, which is something we never had at CAL FIRE. It was just kind of you and the boys at the station after a call talking about it. But it's something that I think is a great thing here. And I think it's something that a lot of departments should look towards and maybe pick you guys' brains about what you do here. I think it's a great thing. And I got to experience it initially when we got hired here with Clappy and he passed away, and what the foundation did for his family was awesome. And I think that departments need to kind of take note of that. Nice.
Jeremy, same question to you with Vista, compare and contrast. And I know they're very similar to us. Did they have a peer support team, and did they do kind of the same things we do?
They did. Unfortunately, like I said, we had Andy Valenta. He died at 33 from work-related cancer. And that kind of expedited things as far as mental health and helping each other out and peer support, and the auxiliary really got involved. So that kind of expedited things. So there was a peer support team in place, and then experiencing again with Clap Saddle, it was huge, not only for the firemen, but for their families, for their kids, their wives. I have those two instances where I just saw, because you hear about it, you hear like, oh, we're a family, we're a fire family. But those two instances is where I like really saw it, and I saw everyone kind of rally around each other and help each other out. So yeah, I'm happy that I've been lucky enough to have two departments that both really prioritize peer support and mental health.
Nice. That's about all I have for you guys. Is there anything you guys want to bring up that we haven't covered, or Peter, anything you want to talk about that we haven't covered, or just kind of want a round table with everybody?
Not for me. Yeah, I think it's encouraging to see like new firefighters like thinking about the things that honestly I never thought about till I was like well into my career. That's encouraging. That to me shows like the fire service is changing as slowly and painful as it takes to change the fire service. But like we weren't having these conversations like about your sleep, Gurshan. Like you're brand new. You're aware of that stuff. We're talking about it. Those are good things. Yeah, it's encouraging to see some of the things that you guys are even the stuff we're even talking about is good. It increases my optimism for addressing some of these issues that frankly mess a lot of people up, especially later in their career. So,
Gurshan, you're probably the first Ventura City employee to speak Punjabi, right, as a second language. So we got some diversity in the city now. That's cool.
That's right.
Did you get the bilingual pay for that?
Mhm.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
It was a little bit of a battle, and I have to shout out to Captain DeRusso. He fought hard for that one and got me that test. But it's great to be able to flaunt. Growing up, being the youngest of three, I have two older sisters, and I felt like their Punjabi was always great, and I was always the one who could speak it and get it, but they'd always make fun of me for having my accent. And so now I'll just flaunt that around, like, excuse me, I'm a certified bilingual Punjabi translator for the city of Ventura. You guys can come down. It's a great thing to have at home.
Well, on that note,
Awesome.
If there's nothing else that you guys want to bring up, I just want to say welcome. I appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to come on the podcast and support the foundation in that way. And let us know if there's anything you guys need. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Well, these last couple episodes have been fun. It was cool having Gurshan, Jeremy, and Steve on the episode this time and hearing just where they come from and why they choose to be with Ventura Fire Department.
Yeah, it's good to see some young energy, some fresh ideas. Hopefully, coming to the fire department. I think it'll be exciting to watch these guys' careers and kind of where they go.
Yeah, definitely. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our podcast, and don't forget about Giving Tuesday. That just passed, and our link is still up. We are a nonprofit. We'll take the donations. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and then just also we are taking the month of December off, so we are going to take a break for the holidays as far as releasing new podcasts, but we will be back in January. Keep an eye out for some new episodes come January.
All right. Have good holidays, Peter. Talk to you soon.
Thanks. You too.